is The Lion, KHNC 1360 AM, Johnstown, Denver.
My friends, welcome to Riell Truth. I am, as always, Howard Riell, and today we've got a special guest, a returning guest, Brigitte Gabriel, the president of ActForAmerica.org. You know her name very well. She's a Lebanese-American conservative journalist, author, activist, founder of Act for America. She's also the author of a forthcoming book called They Must Be Stopped. Brigitte, welcome back to Riell Truth.
Thank you, Howard. I'm delighted to be back with you.
It is a privilege to have you. I want to begin by thanking you for everything that you do and everything that you've done for so long. You are a real, honest-to-goodness champion out there for Western civilization, for sanity, for normalcy, for good people everywhere against the threat that a lot of people won't even admit exists.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your kind words. You know, next time I'm depressed, I'm calling you.
Well, I'm glad. That makes me feel much better. We're going to be taking our first break in about a minute. The thing I want to cover with you right off the bat is whether or not Christians and Jews and other groups, Hindus, are working together to combat the threat of Islamic extremism. Are they, as far as you're concerned?
Well, I know that Christians and Jews and few moderate Muslims are speaking out to combat radical Islamic terrorism and working on it. But we're not hearing enough voices from the Muslim community. We need to see more activism and more patriotism on the part of the Muslim community and less terrorism. And that's when we're going to really start seeing a difference in protecting our nation and preserving our freedom and really be able to trust each other and know that we are safe in our own country, that people like ISIS will not have any traction within our own communities.
You know, that would be a nice thing. We got to get more people on board. I'm not, perhaps you are, and we'll talk more about it. I'm not optimistic about getting more Muslims on board. I don't see any sign that there's anything like a Muslim reformation about to happen. Do you?
No, we don't. And unfortunately, those very few voices of moderates who are speaking out are basically shunned, rejected, and ejected from their mosques. They are not getting in traction. They have very few followers. And those who say that they are practicing Muslims, who are trying to basically bring about reform, are basically going against the commandments of the Quran. And that's exactly why they're not getting any traction within the Muslim community.
Right. They're not getting any. I don't expect that they will. And that's why I think it's so important and increasingly important for Jews and Christians especially to get together. Let's take our first break, and we'll come back with Brigitte Gabriel. This is Riell Truth.
The American freedom never need to peaceful 1-805 to make sure send a check or money to PO Box 1750, Johnstown, Colorado 80534. PO Box 175, Johnstown, Colorado 80534. Help us keep voicing freedom on the air.
Choice City Electric in Fort Collins reminds listeners, out of sight should not mean out of mind. Let's remember our brave men and women of the military by sending care packages to them while they are away. You need not have a specific soldier in mind to help. Just call your local veterans organization. This message is from Choice City Electric in Fort Collins, your electrical and retrofit specialist. Visit them online or call 970-493-4077. That's 970-493-4077.
Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirit, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone into the world. By this you will know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Yeshua, Jesus, has come in the flesh is of God, and every spirit that does not confess that Yeshua, Jesus, has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist, which you have already already heard was coming and is now already in the world. 1 John 4:1.
And we are back. Howard Riell, Riell Truth, special guest today, Brigitte Gabriel. By the way, her organization's website, actforamerica.org. It's a splendid organization, my friends. If you can support it, I urge you to. They're doing great work. Brigitte, I'm an Orthodox Jew, and here I am on a Christian radio station. I am all about Jews and Christians holding hands, working together on a variety of issues, but none as important as the threat from Islamic extremism. How should Jews and Christians work together? What kinds of things should we do? What kinds of efforts should we put forth in order to combat that threat?
Well, for starters, we need to start speaking the truth and identifying the problem and reaching out to those within the Christian and Jewish movement who are endorsing, deceited people like Linda Sarsour, for example, who is encouraging what she calls, dialogue and interface, yet she has a lot of terror links to different terrorist organizations and different terrorist figures. She actually has family members who are now serving time in Israeli jails for acts of terrorism. A lot of people in our country, Howard, are being deceived, and they are deceived because we as a Judeo-Christian culture want to love everybody. We do not want to judge everybody. We want to do unto others what we want others to do unto us. This is the world that we come from. This is the world view. These are the principles we are raised with. And we are faced with an enemy that is willing to lie, to deceive, and to do whatever they have to do to undermine our society and to actually harbor terrorists who are trying to attack our society. And this has been proven again and again and again. So when we see movements, for example, within the Christian community or the Jewish community, endorsing figures like Linda Sarsour, endorsing organizations like CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a front for Hamas in the United States, when we see evangelical churches, mega churches like Rick Warren's church in California, for example, 35,000 members, endorsing the idea of Chrislam as if Islam and Christianity are one. This is where we have a lot of educating to do and a lot of information to basically put out in misguided churches and synagogues around the country who don't really understand what we are dealing with.
It's interesting you mentioned Judeo-Christian culture. Is it an overstatement? Is it too much to say that Judeo-Christian culture today is under attack?
It is absolutely under attack. I am writing my third book right now, which will come out on September 11th, 2018, this year. And it is titled Rise in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom. And the whole book is discussing the attacks on our Judeo-Christian principles, foundations, freedoms, way of life. Right now, to give you a perfect example, what's happening in the school system, for example, we're not teaching about the foundation of Western civilization, which is founded on Judeo-Christian values. This is what made Western civilization so amazing. But we cannot talk about these things. We cannot sing the praises of Judeo-Christian values. Yet at the same time, we are teaching the students about the greatness of Islam. We are singling out one religion, Islam, over any other religions. And instead of speaking the truth about what Islamic terrorism is doing around the world, the intolerance, the suppression of freedom of speech and freedom of expression under Islam. And basically, the discussion of the 21st century right now is the difference between oppressive regimes and oppressive countries, whether it's communist, socialist, or Islamic, and compare that to the freedom and open-mindedness and tolerance in the Judeo-Christian world, the difference could not be greater. Yet we're not teaching this to our children in school. We are not teaching them where their freedom comes from. What we are doing is glamorizing a very oppressive religion like Islam and encouraging children to dress in hijab and dress in niqab, basically covering their whole body in black, only showing their eyes, to experience the wonderfulness of Islamic culture. Yet I don't see any World Kippah Day where we are encouraging the students to wear kippahs and experience what it's like to be Jewish. And what started actually Christianity. We are an offspring of Judaism. We don't see any of that. It's like, Howard, it's like a systematic erasement of our traditions and our history and heritage from our schools, from the young generations today, and if we do not stop it now and actively become involved in basically standing up for our Judeo-Christian values and freedoms and culture and tradition and heritage, the future generations of America, even those kids walking around us today, under 20 years old, will never experience in America that you and I have experienced and our parents have experienced before us.
Brigitte, you are on a fantastic YouTube video. You're sitting in on a panel, and someone stands up and says, well, the extremists in Islam are a small minority. And when they say that, you point out brilliantly that a peaceful majority seldom keeps an extremist minority from committing horrifying outrages in Germany, in China, whatever a small extreme minority is enough to bring about mass murder.
Exactly, because evil dwells when good people do nothing, and the majority of people, I tell people when I speak, Howard, 2% of the passionate will always rule the 98% of the indifferent.
Right.
So in the world today, it doesn't matter what culture, what country, what language they speak, what color their skin is. It doesn't matter. You always have the passionate minority driving the agenda. And what we are seeing out of the Islamic world right now is the radical jihadist minority driving the agenda. Yes, we have 1.2 billion Muslims around the world today. And of course, not all of them are radical. The majority of them are peaceful. But the peaceful ones are truly irrelevant when you look at what the acts of the minority and the mayhem and what they are causing worldwide in killing and destruction. And when you look at the lessons of history, and in the YouTube clip that you are referring to, I discussed the lessons of history from Germany, Japan, China, Russia. You look at Germany, for example, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda, and
right.
As a result, almost 60 million people worldwide died because of that war.
Brigitte, hang on 1 second.
14 million in concentration camps, 6 million were Jews.
Hang on 1 second.
Irrelevant.
We're hitting a hard break. We got to stop for a commercial. We'll be right back. My friends, more Riell Truth ahead. Go nowhere.
And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness of him and cried out, saying, This was he of whom I said, He who comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 14 and 15. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. This is the America News Network.
Chapel and Collins LLC salutes our emergency first responders for their professionalism, commitment, and bravery. They're willing to put their lives on the line for us with little or no thanks. So let's all take the time to thank our first responders for all they do for us. Also thanking our veterans for the sacrifices they made for our freedom. This message is from Chapel and Collins LLC, with 2 locations in Denver and Fort Collins, serving the community for over 13 years. Visit them online at chapelcollins.com. Piccolo's restaurant in Denver reminds us that over 750,000 children were reported missing last year. Over 58,000 of these were abducted by non-family members. Keep an eye out for youngsters at play, and if you see anything suspicious, contact the authorities immediately. This message from Piccolo's restaurant in Denver is not only the best Italian and Mexican cuisine, it's the people who care. Give them a call at 303-757-5166. 303-757-5166. Piccolo.
All right, folks, welcome back to Riell Truth. Howard Riell, my special guest today, Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, headline on Act for America's website: Google manipulates search results to conceal criticism of Islam and jihad. Why is the major media in America going to bat to protect Muslim extremists?
Because the Islamic lobby is very influential, and the Islamic lobby is working with progressive organizations. And let's not forget, this is exactly what they discuss in their Muslim Brotherhood Project for North America. In my last book, They Must Be Stopped, I dedicate a whole chapter about the Muslim Brotherhood Project for North America, where they discuss it's a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. And they discuss the plan for the destruction of the United States. And what makes it so, the plan for the United States is so interesting for North America, because they discuss 29 front organizations set up in the United States to basically destroy America from within. And so these organizations are now devoted on working very closely with leftist organizations, whether in Hollywood, whether in the media, whether in the press, whether in intellectual thought or in universities, whether in education, in every aspect of our society. And what we are seeing right now is because the leftist sympathy and their basically resentment towards America, they are finding common ground with the Islamists. Actually, in the Muslim Brotherhood Project, where they give tactics and proposals on how to work with they call it, quote, like-minded progressive organizations in the West in order to destroy the West from within, we see the perfect fit between how it explains why Islamic organizations are working with the leftists and why the leftists are being used basically as the useful idiots at the hands of Islamic organizations with an agenda. So that's why we are seeing internet companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, basically controlling the message and changing the algorithm. If you and I, Howard, are Googling something because we need to write something, we can't even find half the articles on Google because they are censoring them. They don't even appear anymore.
Right. Absolutely. When Trump was running for president, he talked about a Muslim ban. And of course, he had to walk that back, and he no longer talked about that. Was that a mistake? Should there be a Muslim ban on immigration of Muslims?
Well, first of all, it was a pause on basically immigration and people coming into the United States. Right. It was not a ban. If he wanted to do it as a Muslim ban, he would have put Saudi Arabia and all other Islamic countries. So when you have on that ban, like the countries that he added, such as Venezuela, I do not consider Venezuela an Islamic country.
Right.
But President Trump could have done better with the messaging, but he didn't do anything different that President Obama did in identifying the countries. I mean, the only extra country that he added was Syria. And why would we fight about that? I mean, do we really want people coming from Syria right now that we cannot vet? We do not know anything about their background. ISIS actually captured the embassy that prints passports, and ISIS was printing Syrian passports and giving it to refugees who were supposedly running to Europe and from Europe going to different parts of the world. And so he could have, his messaging should have been better, could have been better, but the reality is the reality that President Trump put a pause on refugees or people immigrating from countries that were identified originally by President Obama himself.
I was looking at jihadwatch.org today. Robert Spencer, he was on the show a couple of months ago. Brand new story in Pakistan. Muslim mob calls for beheading of Christian for blasphemy, threatens to burn down Christian homes. You know, I come on this show, and again, my audience is largely Christian, and I say, guys, there are 2 billion Christians in the world. Why aren't you rising up and putting the shackles on Islam, on Muslim Islam? And it doesn't seem like Christians the world over realize that we're in a battle of civilizations. Have I got it framed correctly, Brigitte?
Listen, it's so difficult for me, Howard, for me personally, as a Christian who was persecuted in the Middle East and immigrated to the United States. I don't know if you read my first book, Because They Hate, which is my memoir. I mean, I lived for 7 years of my life in a bomb shelter underground trying to survive without electricity, water, and very little food. So no one cared about what was happening to the Christians in Lebanon. And I would always wonder, how come these big countries in America, Australia, Canada, England, France, how come they're not helping the Christians? And I didn't understand until I came to America. And now working on raising awareness about what's happening, the attacks against Jews in the Middle East and against Christians in the Middle East and around the world. And finally, here's what I learned, Howard. I learned that because Christians have never went through a Holocaust, a persecution for their religion, like the Jews did worldwide, and like the Christians of the Middle East did and are still going under a Holocaust, under a cleansing out of the Middle East, Christians in America do not understand what it's like to be persecuted for your religion. In America, their idea of persecution is, people looked at me funny because I brought my Bible with me to work. That's their idea of persecution. It's completely different than your idea of persecution as a Jew who had, maybe extended family members fumigated in gas chambers simply because they were Jews, and people like me who saw their friends slaughtered before their own eyes. By the time I was 20, Howard, I had buried most of my friends who were killed by radical Islamists. I had 4 friends alive by the time I was 20. So Christians worldwide who have never been persecuted for their religion, especially Western Christians, cannot identify or relate to the experiences you and I have. And, we try to sound the alarm, and I thank you for sounding the alarm, but this is something we must continue doing, and we owe it to the Christians and the Jews and minorities. Look at what's happening to the Yazidis, for us to stand up, because if we don't stand up in America as the most powerful, most free bloc of freedom-thinking, freedom-loving, and God-fearing people, who else is going to stand up for these minorities? And I think it's about time America needs to lead in this area and start paying attention to these issues. And I encourage people to go to our website, actforamerica.org. We are the largest national security grassroots organization in the country. We have chapters nationwide. We increase awareness. We give you tips on what you can do as an activist. Sign up to become an activist. Sign up to start a chapter in your community. And come together. We will train you how you can lobby your elected officials, how you can make phone calls, write letters. We even have pre-written letters that you can just send. Many ideas. I encourage people to go to actforamerica.org and sign up today as a member or as an activist and become involved. And even better, become a chapter president. Start a chapter in your community.
Brigitte, I've always gone on the assumption that Donald Trump listens to this show. So if he's listening right now, or maybe he'll see it on YouTube later, what would you advise him to do? What should the United States do going forward the next year, 2 years, 3 years? What do you recommend?
Donald Trump knows exactly what to do, and this is what I respect and love about this president. Because finally we have a president that doesn't give a flying kite whether the world approves of us or not, whether the UN likes us or not. He does what is right for America. I have talked to President Trump. President Trump understands the situation completely and clearly. He understands the threat of radical Islam to our Judeo-Christian values, and he is working as hard as he can to turn back the tide. I mean, look at the article that came out today about the Iranians so upset with him and threatening to sue the United States because they consider that President Trump is violating the Iran agreement by basically doing everything he can to sabotage Iran from getting more money and having economic freedom around the world. And good for him. We finally have a president who is doing what is right, fighting evil and standing up for what is good.
I absolutely agree with you. one of the narratives in the news the last several months is that Arab countries in the Middle East are finally realizing that they should warm to Israel. They should work with Israel because they face a greater threat from Iran. They've got war in Syria. Is that just a narrative, or is that true? Is that really what Arab countries in the Middle East are thinking?
Well, look, I mean, right now, Iran wants hegemony over the Middle East, and Sunni Arab nations understand that. So when you look at the majority Middle East, it's a majority Sunni nations. The Shiites are only a little bit in Iraq, a little bit in Lebanon, a little bit in Syria. I mean, literally very, very small minorities, and the majority of them are in Iran. So when you look at the rest of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the majority of Syria, I mean, this is why the Muslim Brotherhood, the Sunnis, are rising against the Assad regime. When you look at all these big countries in the Middle East, I mean, from Arab Emirates, all of them, they are all Sunni Islamic countries, and they are seeing the threat of Iran. And this is why it is in their best interest and survival to basically start working with Israel to protect themselves from Iran. And that's why they are reaching out. And we know that the Saudis have held talks with the Israelis behind the scenes in allowing Israel to basically use Saudi airspace in case they need to attack Iran or the nuclear installation in Iran. We know that Egypt has already had talks with Israel, allowing Israel to use it to send its submarines through the Suez Canal in order to attack Iran. These type of conversations have been going on now for 5 years. You see, only now Americans are waking up and realizing the dire threat of Iran to the world, to peace in the world. But Israel has been warning about this threat since 2003. No one in the world was listening. The Middle Eastern nations have woken up much, much earlier to the threat of Iran than Western nations are waking up to.
I'm getting the sense that finally, at long last, we've only got a few minutes left, Western countries are sick and tired of hearing about the Palestinian plight. We're sick and tired of all the hate and the rhetoric coming out of the Muslim world. When Donald Trump decided that the United States would recognize Jerusalem as the capital, there was great saber rattling in the Arab world. And I think, if my read is correct, Western countries said, shut up already. We're tired of hearing it. Just go with the program. Is that your read also?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel. This is nothing new. Finally, Donald Trump had the guts to stand up and say, okay, we're moving to our embassy to Jerusalem, the capital, as we have in every other country in the world where we have an embassy. And, you know, they huffed and puffed, and they're going to huff and puff again when we move the embassy, you know, when it opens up, and that will be it. Western nations are and Middle Eastern nations are realizing also that working with Trump and working with Israel will ensure they're going to have to do it because the two most powerful countries, America and Israel, do want peace. The Islamic world is right now faced with Iran, who wants war, and they are saying, they're just putting on a show. They do not want it to move to Jerusalem because they know that the Palestinian battle cry, basically the Palestinian issue is a battle cry to unite the whole world. They're doing lip service, but the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem is inevitable.
Okay. We've only got 2 minutes left. Tell us about the book that you have coming out in September.
Well, I'm writing this book because I realize that we are now at a point in our nation, Howard, that we are at a crossroad in our nation. The deterioration of our nation on all fronts is happening, and it is decaying from the inside. And this is exactly what destroyed the Roman Empire. I know in our camp, the Judeo-Christian camp, a lot of people say, well, I want to pray about it. You know, Jews want to tikkun olam, want to make the world a better place. Christians want to pray for their enemies. But while we are praying and while we are trying to tikkun olam, we're not standing up to at least protect that which we already have and preserve it to our future generations. We need to not only pray, not only to just sit around and read our Bible and go to church or go to synagogue. We need to stand up and take action. I named the organization Act for America, not think about America, not wish for America, not hope for America, but act for America, because without taking action, nothing happens. So I am hoping with my book that people who will read it will wake up and say, we need to respect law and order in our country. We need to respect our police. We need to make sure we have separation between church and state so we do not indoctrinate our children into religious education about a preferred religion in public schools, and at this point it is Islam. We need to throw political correctness in the garbage, and we need to take pride in our Judeo-Christian values and freedoms, which our founding fathers fought so hard for us to preserve and have this country that they gave us. The least we can do is preserve it for our children.
Brigitte, you are a real hero. Thank you very much for being on the show today. I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. My friends, we'll be right back with more Riell Truth.
Animal House Taxidermy in Brighton would like to take this time to say thank you to all the brave men and women in the armed forces who have served our country. Business owners, consider hiring veterans, our most dependable resource. And to those heroes back home from missions abroad, know that your dedication, selflessness, and courage are appreciated. May God bless America. This message is from Animal House Taxidermy in Brighton, proud to salute the fighting forces of our country.
This is my control. The American Freedom Network needs to please call 645. That's 1-800-05-645 to make this donation. Or send a check or money to PO Box 1750, Johnstown, Colorado 80534. PO Box 1750, Johnstown, Colorado 80534. Help us keep the voice of truth and freedom on the air. Thank you.
Now this is the testimony of John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 19 through 21.
The associates at your 24-hour Walmart Supercenter in Lafayette remind you, no one anywhere is more noble, righteous, selfless, or courageous than our United States Armed Forces. These brave men and women and their families foot the bill for our freedom every day. Send a military care package today to let them know that they are in our hearts and our prayers and our thoughts. This message is from the associates at your 24-hour Walmart Supercenter on Highway 287 in Lafayette. They're on the air because they care.
Elizabeth Locker Plan and Elizabeth reminds our listeners that the drug problem is well documented. We know our kids will be approached at early age. We want to applaud the youngsters in our community who have had the strength to say no to drugs. They provide examples to their peers and families to be the best they can be. That's from Elizabeth Locker Plant, located at 366 Grant Street in Elizabeth, serving our area since 1943 and specializing in naturalized H&B and complete custom processing. Call 303-688-2240. That's 303-688-2240. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Welcome back to Riell Truth. Once again, my thanks to Brigitte Gabrielle. She really is an honest-to-goodness hero. She's fearless, she is zealous, and she's fighting for you and for me and our children and grandchildren and this great country. So go to actforamerica.org. Check out what she's got there. Lots of good content. If you can support her organization, please do. Meanwhile, we're fighting our own battles here at home. Here's Sean Hannity on Fox News yesterday.
Hillary Clinton and DNC using GPS and former British spy Christopher Steele.
Up.
It shouldn't be a surprise. maybe even under oath. And now that you activity.
So in other words, my friends, well, here's what the Democrats are saying. Yeah, we see the facts, but forget them because they get in the way of our narrative. Trump is evil. He colluded with the Russians. And if the facts don't bear that out at all, well, we're liberals, they're saying. We don't care about facts. We care about how we feel. And because we hate conservatives, we hate Republicans, really we hate intelligent grown-ups because that's not us. So we're going to continue to attack Trump, even though it has absolutely no merit, even though he clearly did nothing. And that's the position that the liberals, the Democrats, have had all along. I don't expect them to change any more than I expect a leopard to change his spots. They are what they are, and that's all that they are. I'm not going to say I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, but they will not let go of this Russian narrative because, my friends, believe me, it's all the Democrats have. All they've got. We'll take a break, and we'll be back because we've got more. This is Riell Truth.
And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 16. Article 4. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the places to be searched and the person or thing to be seen. If catastrophe struck, would your family be prepared? Are you confident you wouldn't react in a panic? Is there one place to get all of your emergency supplies? Paris Survival encourages you to have confidence through preparation, not panic through crisis. Paris Survival, located at 3366 South Broadway, is a professional, reputable, full-service business providing quality, realistic preparedness supplies at an affordable price. Go online, stop by, or call 303-781-0343. Paris Survival. American Window Tinting Incorporated in Fragtown reminds parents, keep an eye on your child while shopping. Children tend to stray or become lost. This poses an opportunity for a would-be abductor. Please make every effort to keep track of your little one at all times. If you have information regarding a lost child, call local authorities at once. This message is from American Window Tinting Incorporated in Franktown. For residential or commercial window tinting, call 303-263-4228.
My friends, it's a funny thing about America. Funny thing. We are a celebrity-obsessed culture. We salivate over getting glimpses of actors, like actors are important people. They're people who make a lot of money, too much money if you ask me, for playing make-believe, which we all did when we were kids. Anyway, we put actors up on a pedestal, but a lot of actors are pinheads. And because they have microphones in front of their faces, they think people want to hear what they have to say when they really don't. Here is Judge Jeanine Pirro on Fox News ripping actors a new one. My friends, Robert De Niro was a really good actor who was relevant 20, 25 years ago. Now he's hanging on, taking bit parts. Nobody cares about him anymore. And he thinks if he goes out and uses expletives about the president that suddenly people will like him and care about him anymore. You know, sometimes throughout history, extremely talented people have been losers in their private lives. Robert De Niro is the poster child for that. He's been a brilliant actor, been in some of the great movies of the 20th century, and the guy's a slob. In real life, he's an ignoramus and a simpleton. He thinks he's important enough to get up and speak about matters great and small, and that he's smarter than Donald Trump. Robert De Niro isn't smarter than anybody who works at the local Walmart. He's good at playing make-believe, which is acting, but he's not a smart man. And every time he opens his mouth, he proves that he's not a smart man and that he's kind of a lowlife in real life.
Notice how we had to read everything.
By the way, I'm looking at a picture of Chelsea Handler here. You know who she looks like? She looks like Betty Davis and whatever happened to Baby Jane.
And Sean Penn. This week,
That's exactly right. Oh, Judge, thank you so much for saying that. Sean Penn was groveling at the feet of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, who's a murderer and a criminal, licking his backside. But he feels that he can look down on Donald Trump. Sean Penn met his intellectual match when he was married to Madonna, who was also a dummy. Another case of empty barrels making the most noise. Only problem is, in Hollywood, the empty barrels have microphones to use.
hey Sean, what is we would rather our nation fail.
And by the way, where were these geniuses, these late night geniuses like Kimmel and Colbert? These guys feel they have the smarts to comment on the major issues of the day. Meanwhile, when there's a writer's strike, they're off the air. Because unless they've got someone else being funny for them, unless they've got someone else writing words that they can simply read on TV, They've got nothing to say. They open their mouth and it's like Ralph Cramden, humana, 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 humana. But these guys will pass themselves off as geniuses. And it's no coincidence that their fan base is very, very young. Because if you're a high school or a college student, you think that the Colberts and the Kimmels of the world really are smart. Because you don't know. You have no experience base. But they're really like Robert De Niro. They're empty-headed Hollywood types who have nothing to comment about when it comes to real life. We'll take a break and we'll finish up.
Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirit, whether they are God. Because many false prophets have gone into the world. By this you will know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Yeshua, Jesus, has come in the flesh is of God. Every spirit that does not confess that Yeshua, Jesus, has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist, which you have already heard was coming and is now already in the world. 1 John 4:1.
No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debt, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Article 1, Section 10.
Chapel and Collins LLC salutes our emergency first responders for their professionalism, commitment, and bravery. They're willing to put their lives on the line for us with little or no thanks. So let's all take the time to thank our first responders for all they do for us. Also thanking our veterans for the sacrifice they made for our freedom. This message is from Chapel and Collins LLC, with 2 locations in Denver and Fort Collins, serving the community for over 13 years. Visit them online at chapelcollins.com. Piccolo's restaurant in Denver reminds us over 60,000 children were reported missing this year. Over 58,000 of these were abducted by non-family members. Keep an eye out for youngsters at play, and if you see anything suspicious, contact the authorities immediately. This message from Piccolo's restaurant in Denver. It's not only the best Italian and Mexican cuisine, it's the people who care. Give them a call at 303-757-5166. 303-757-5166. Piccolo.
All right, guys, welcome back to Riell Truth. Item from Newsbusters. One of the revelations in Friday's indictment handed down by Special Counsel Robert Mueller was that alleged Russian attempts to sow disunity in 2016 include the organization of both pro- and anti-Trump rallies in New York City on the Saturday after Election Day. A check of their November 12 coverage showed that both CNN and MSNBC gave enthusiastic coverage to the Russian-organized anti-Trump rally that day, with live reports every hour. Correspondents celebrated the idea that it was a, quote, lovely rally, and repeated the marchers' anti-Trump mantras such as, quote, we reject the president-elect, unquote. So the liberal pinheads at CNN and MSNBC were working hand in glove with the Russians to sow disunity. The major media, CNN, MSNBC, were working with America's enemy to help damage America. Remember that the next time you're sitting in front of your TV trying to decide which channel to watch. Item from InfoWars. A writer for popular far-left website The Root has penned an article calling for black people to start barking at white people who speak out of turn. No. This is not a parody. Complaining that the fictional African country of Wakanda could never be created in reality because, quote, we're too infected with colonization and its myriad residues and peripheral effects, unquote. The Root's Damon Young does think one thing from the Black Panther movie could be implemented immediately, barking at white people to shut them up. He writes, quote, one thing, however, we definitely should start doing is what M'Baku and his Q-Dog Jabari tribe did when encountering a problematic white dude who was speaking when there was no ask or need or purpose for the thoughts and opinions of problematic white dudes. Bark. Not a purposeless bark. This isn't a Shih Tzu barking through the window at a squirrel. Instead, this would be an intentional bark, a targeted bark, an overpowering bark, a drowning bark, a Wakandan bark. A bark meant to communicate, who told you you can speak? When it's time for your words, we'll let you know, and maybe that time will never come. We'll see. Now just shut up and stand there. Maybe get on your phone and Google how not to be a colonizer. Whatever you do, I want to hear you not speaking. Unquote. Young goes on to advocate the opening of a school of Wakandan white silencing, while providing several examples of when white people should be barked at. He writes, quote, a wayward white hand reaches for your hair, woof, woof, woof. A group of white people huddled on a sidewalk refuse to step aside when you attempt to walk past them, woof, woof, woof. A purse is clutched when you walk on an elevator, woof, woof, woof. Despite its tongue-in-cheek nature, the article is yet another example of how identity politics-obsessed progressives are using the Black Panther movie to stoke more racism and division amongst Americans. Unquote. My friends, you really can't make this stuff up. This is real life. If you're having trouble accepting that this is indeed real life, it's because you're not a liberal. You're listening to a show that prizes truth and common sense. And so you can't understand people who bark at other people or people who go out in the forest and scream and howl at the sky, because that's liberals. That ain't us. I'll see you tomorrow. Hasta luego.